Yes, guys, welcome back to Talking Wolves. Welcome back to a brand new match preview on the channel. Wolves are on their travels again. This weekend, we're off to St Mary's to take on Southampton in the Premier League. Really looking forward to this game, guys, especially after the victory over Liverpool last week. Be sure to let me know your thoughts ahead of this game in the comment section. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. But yeah, really looking forward to it. It's going to be my first trip down to St Mary's this weekend. And I'm hoping Wolves can build on it. We've got a few favourable fixtures coming up, and it's a chance of really Wolves to, jump up the table, get a little bit of breathing space between us and the sort of the bottom three right now. We play Southampton this weekend. We've got Bournemouth at home next weekend, and then Fulham away the following week as well. I think Fulham is probably, on paper right now, the toughest out of the three, but I think all three of the games we should be able to get something out of. The win against Liverpool was fantastic for Wolves and a real good place of Wolves to carry on building and trying to get some positive results and so on. In regards to injury issues, Hwang Hee-chan is probably the latest injury problem for Wolves right now. It seemed like he pulled up against Liverpool despite a strong, solid start to the game for him. We've seen Pedro Neto back in training. If you watch the latest Wolves training video, they're doing their match practices, they're doing their attacking phases, and Pedro Neto is pretty heavily involved in that. So hopefully that signals a return for him is in the near future now. Lemina did also come off with a knock, but it didn't look as serious as the other ones. But I'm sure Lopetegui will confirm with what's going on with those players. Obviously in the press conference on Friday. Now Southampton on the other hand have had a strange season, a couple of managers, a couple of changes, but life under Nathan Jones has not been great for them so far. I did think at the time when they appointed him in November, it was a little bit of a strange one, a little bit of a risk for them. Nathan Jones has obviously done so well at Luton Town, had a little bit of a spell at Stoke City, which just didn't go quite well. And obviously his return to Luton had been going well again. The job at Southampton is obviously a massive jump up from Luton Town, where the expectations from an outsider look very small, whereas now you're in charge of a football club and trying to keep them in the Premier League. I think it's a different kettle of fish, really, and you can see that with the fans on his back already. So I think if Wolves start off brightly on Saturday, it could go toxic quite quickly in the Southampton end, and Wolves could take real advantage of that. And it's I suppose part of me is still glad that he's in a job right now, because they're still fragile at the moment. So let's see. Let's jump into my predicted lineup anyway, guys, for what I would go for in this game. As you can see, I've gone very similar to the team that Lopetegui went with on Saturday against Liverpool. I did have my doubts about that team, but they proved me completely wrong. I've gone with Jose Starr in goal, a completely unchanged back four with Aït-Nouri and Semedo as the fullbacks, and Craig Dawson playing alongside Max Kilman. A little bit shocked that Kilman kept his place ahead of Collins, but he did really well against Liverpool on Saturday. An unchanged midfield three with Neves, Nunes and Lemina in there. Of course, we saw Nunes almost push out to be playing as a left midfielder at times, and I think that could be done again. And the front three, I've put Podence in ahead of Hwang, just because I think he's going to be out for this game, and Cunha and Sarabia keep their place in the team. Do let me know what you think about those guys, and if you would make any changes to that lineup. And before we jump into the Southampton perspective, of course, our partners over at BetMate have once again got this Wolves game in one of their pots. This weekend, we are in the Saturday 3 PM kickoff pot, £600 guaranteed. Me and George finished top two in last week's pot for the Liverpool game, so I'm hoping for a positive one. Again, it's a £5 entry for your chance to get involved in that £600 pot. My team for this one, as you can see, I've gone with Keylor Navas in goal, Estupinan and Gabriel as my defenders. Ruben Neves in the middle there as captain. I'm hoping he has another big game. With João Palhinha in the middle there. Harry Kane as my vice captain up front alongside Bukayo Saka. So do get involved. A link to join BetMate is in the top of the description. They've got their freebie February going on at the moment, so loads of free pots. So if you just want to test it out, chuck a couple of free teams, get involved in a few pots, then feel free to do so. A link is in the top of the description. You can use TW10 for a £10 bonus when you join a paid pot, and of course 18 plus. Please gamble aware, and obviously UK residents only as well. But I spoke to Dan Hargraves earlier this week, Southampton fan and journalist, to get his thoughts on Southampton's season so far and which players we should be looking out for on Saturday. So, Dan, thank you for coming back on Talking Wolves again. It's good to see you and the Saints View channel back as well. How are you keeping, mate?
Yeah, besides the football, I'm doing well. I'm fine. I think it's going to start getting warmer now, so hopefully sunny football soon. But yeah, no, I'm decent, mate.
Good, good, good. Yeah, Wolves Saints this weekend. Obviously, it's St Mary's. I'm going down. Looking forward to it. First time I've been to St Mary's
Okay.
before, and it's been a strange season for both teams. Obviously, Wolves have struggled as well. Seem to have picked up their form a little bit recently, but Southampton still haven't quite got going. We look at the Premier League table, rock bottom, now 3 points adrift. Nathan Joe's in charge since November. We'll talk a bit more about him shortly, but from your point of view, what's your thoughts been on the season so far?
Um, Look, it's obviously been a disappointment. 10 brand new players came through in this summer, with the vast majority of them pretty much well involved in first team plans. It was nice to see some big changes in the summer. We got some coaching, or the coaching staff, I should say, changed behind Ralph. He actually got an assistant with qualifications, which wasn't really something that he'd had before. Because it was basically going to be a case of sack Ralph, Hasenhüttl, or give him some backing and give him some coaches, because it was the first summer transfer window of our ownership called Sport Republic. And yeah, I mean, they did that. They went for the option of getting coaches in and backing the manager in charge, because in fairness, he hadn't really been back during his tenure, even though we kind of had two really tricky seasons. But it was pretty clear to see that the writing was on the wall for Ralph, and it was just a matter of time before he was going to be dismissed. Some great players that we brought in, but an emphasis on young players. We've got the second youngest squad in the Premier League, second to Arsenal. And the difference is, I believe, anyway, that Arsenal have had time to gel. Arteta's had time with those players. Most of those were there last season, whereas with us, it's kind of a new team. And it just hasn't clicked. Some of them individually have been brilliant. The likes of Romeo Lavia, Armel Balekotchap, they're going to go on to be really, really top players. But yeah, like I said, it was clear that Ralph's time was going to be cut short. And obviously, we brought in Nathan Jones, so I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. And outside of the league, in the cups, beating Man City and getting to a semi-final. And to be fair, in both legs against Newcastle, we weren't too bad defensively. We looked relatively organised, although we did lose both games. St James's is a really tough place to go at the moment, but couldn't quite get through. And it looks like we could well get to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup with a favourable draw. So yeah, there've been pros and cons, but when it comes to the Premier League, that's going to be the most important thing for us. And right now, it's not looking good at all.
Yeah, well, Nathan Jones came in November. I mean, to be fair, you were still active in the January
Mm.
window, and I think a couple of the two teams that I think would be most disappointed with the January window are Everton and Leicester. I don't think Everton signed a single player, did they? Leicester weren't really active, but I think a lot of the other teams were quite active. You guys brought
We were
in
the second highest spenders.
really as well.
Yeah.
Well, Paul Onuachu is a player that Wolves have been linked to before, giant of a forward. I am
Mm.
interested to see how he gets on. Carlos Alcaraz, Wolves were linked with as well, really talented midfielder. So you brought in a lot of players. Orsic, who's got Champions League, European experience as well. So they're not bad signings for Southampton. Were they the right signings? Do you think? I think the forward areas was somewhere where you were quite light. I think they've addressed that quite heavily, haven't they?
Yeah, no, look, I think everyone's happy with the the January business. The main priority was to get a striker in. That was the major failure of the summer transfer window, albeit getting 10 players in, we didn't get a high caliber forward. I know you guys were linked with Gonzalo Ramos. He was someone we were linked with. Cody Gakpo in the end stayed at PSV and obviously has since gone to Liverpool. There were loads of forwards that we were linked with, but just couldn't quite get over the line. So now, yeah, Paul Onuachu, we'll have to see whether he's that top caliber forward. But like you say, 6'7", he's the tallest player in the Premier League, I'm led to believe. Came off the bench at halftime at Brentford alongside Kamaldeen Sulemana. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he looks to be a decent, tricky winger and is our club record signing. So look, it's been a decent January window, but you have to have the right man in charge to put the pieces of the jigsaw together. And right now, I don't think any Saints fan has confidence that the man in charge can do that and ultimately keep the team in the Premier League.
Yeah, so that leads us on to Nathan Jones. Hasenhüttl went. Nathan Jones comes in, a
Mm.
manager that we know has done really well in 2 spells at Luton. Went to Stoke City a few years ago, didn't go so well, and I think it was a brave choice by Southampton, to be honest, Dan, because I think he just hadn't. I know he'd done well with Luton, but I don't think he'd proved it enough yet to get that Premier League move. And like you said, I think a fantastic win against City in the cup, but in the league, not done brilliantly, has he? And I think
Mm.
the comments at the weekend as well. If I was a Southampton fan, I would have been really disappointed with those comments that he'd made. Just for people listening or watching, what were those comments? What did you think of them? And I mean, I've seen the reply to the Southampton tweet as well today. I think it was about tickets, and it was just Jones out, Jones out, Jones out. I think Wolves fans, I think this could give us a boost ahead of Saturday, because if things don't go your way early doors, St Mary's could get toxic quite quickly, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who weren't aware, obviously 3-0 defeat at Brentford. The worst defeat actually under Jones. Generally speaking, we've been quite good at, or we've looked better at organised at the back, in fairness. But Saturday was a complete disaster class, really. Again, albeit against the top side, but he basically, didn't take responsibility, and he hasn't. He's every press conference he's referred to his players as they, not us. He's been saying they had these same problems under the previous manager, just not taking responsibility. It's his job to improve it. And I think now it's fair to say he's had enough time. There were arguments, straight after the World Cup break that 6 weeks was more than enough time. Personally, I didn't feel that. I did think it was going to take a bit longer, but now we really should have been seeing massive improvements. But then again, as well, like I say, not taking responsibility, but then saying things like, when Southampton hired me, on paper, he was one of the most, or the highest sought after managers in Europe, or the highest quality available based on what he'd done at Luton. The championship, being championship manager of the year doesn't make you one of Europe's highest priority managers, or sort of highest ranked managers, if you like. And so just absolute waffle, throwing arguably our brightest young player under the bus in Romeo Lavia, because he got asked about bringing Romeo Lavia off midway through the second half, I believe it was. And it was visible, I should say, that Lavia was quite disappointed. And I think he'd probably been our best player. And Nathan Jones completely threw him on the bus, saying, was he controlling the game? Just for a 19-year-old, you don't want to hear that from your coach. And obviously, subsequently, Lavia was the player who joined us Twitter space. I think it was on Monday night, where Southampton fans vented about Nathan Jones. So that's interesting enough. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on. Now that it seems that Nathan Jones does have at least one more game in charge to see if he can rectify things, it will go absolutely toxic. I think it's going to be toxic regardless of how Saints start the game, to be honest with you. It's very, I mean, I've not seen this at all. Like, it never got this bad with Ralph Hasenhüttl, and there was a massive section of the fan base that thought his time was up. And it's crazy to think how quickly it's happened. Jones has only had 7 games in the league, but he's lost 6 of them, and we've scored 1 goal from open play. Yeah, that doesn't keep you in the top flight. And if arguably that's a worse record than what we were doing under Hasenhüttl. So yeah, I think if I'm a Wolves fan, I'm buzzing right now. I think 3-0 win against Liverpool, this is a relegation rival. You really need to be separating yourself away from that bottom 3, and this is a perfect opportunity to do that. I looked as well before jumping on this call at Wolves' recent form at St Mary's. I think you've won like your last 2-3 trips, something like that. I think it's been quite a happy hunting ground for you guys over recent seasons. So yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be confident for this one.
Do you think he's gone if we win on Saturday? Do you think he's gone?
I can't see how he keeps his job. I really can't. I think the next game's Chelsea away and then Leeds away. Chelsea, I don't think anyone will expect anything really, but potentially if we show up, there's a point there. The Leeds is a big one as well, because you'd think they'll have a new manager by then. I think it's the exact same question we asked when Ralph was sacked. Who do we go for? Who's going to improve this side? Who's out there available? Who could we lure? We went for the option to try and lure a manager with Nathan Jones. And on paper, fair enough, it kind of fitted the philosophy when it came to the players that we were trying to sign, young, hungry players from either the lower leagues or from academies. Well, Nathan Jones is technically a young manager in the grand scheme of things, hungry. and he was the best manager in the Championship last season. So it did make sense, albeit it did feel like the cheap option. I think the major frustration with Nathan Jones and the whole appointment is the fact that if you look at Southampton's relegation rivals this season and who they've appointed when they've sacked their manager, I think Wolves is the best example. Lopetegui, Real Madrid, Sevilla, Spain national team. There's a real pedigree there. Unai Emery, multiple Europa League winner. He's coached top sides. You could even argue now with Everton, Sean Dyche, they're not going to be the best footballing side in the league. You know, they'll be rugged, but they'll be defensively solid. We saw it the other night, or the other day even, against Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think you look at the top running speeds, or the top distances, I should say, all season from Everton players. Most of them were against Arsenal. You know, you've got a side that'll work hard for their manager, and they'll go and stay up now. I think that's the major frustration. It feels like we had the perfect opportunity to bring someone in, and we took the wrong call, and now it's costing us.
Despite the poor season for Southampton, there are still going to be players that sort of shine for you guys. Is there anyone that we should be looking out for, who all should be looking out for on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that the two new boys who were signed on deadline day might be handed starts in Paul Onuachu and Kamaldeen Sulemana. I would think that now we've got to be putting Onuachu in there. Shea Adams has had a tricky season, you know, missing a lot of big chances. In terms of other players, like I said, I've spoken about Romeo Lavia quite a bit already. He's been brilliant. He's going to go on to do big things. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if City opt to use his buyback clause in the summer if we get relegated, because I think he's going to be a star. Obviously, James Ward-Prowse, you know, he's the given. Don't concede set pieces. But then the rest of it, it's a case of the unknown, to be honest with you, mate. Like, I think a lot of Saints fans are in agreement on what our best current 11 is that's available. But another thing that Nathan Jones did was put 4 first-team players who probably would have been in contention to start against Brentford in the B team, in the under 23s. I saw that.
We mentioned that on our podcast as well.
Yeah, it's so bizarre.
Strange. Yeah.
Saleta Sarr, best centre-back at the club right now. Orsic, Champions League forward who's just come in January. What does he must be thinking? Do you know what I mean? So Bella Kotchap, another great defender, you know, he's going to go on and do big things, I think, in the game. So it's all been an absolute nightmare. And I think it's all these factors that have built up that have just kind of, you know, cost Jones his respect from the fan base.
And on the flip side, Wolves players, I mean, we've started to show up a little bit now, but any Wolves players that worry you coming into the game on Saturday?
Yeah, I always say Ruben Neves. I've always said when it comes to Wolves, if I was a Wolves fan, it'd be a major worry that our deep line midfield is our top scorer. No,
yeah,
it's, you know, and well, obviously, if I was a Wolves fan, I'd be hoping that now that may change. I'm yet to watch Cunha live. We'll see how he does. But yeah, I always say, you know, I'm a big advocate of Ruben Neves. I was quite surprised that he stayed, to be honest with you, in the summer. But obviously, that's reaping the rewards for Wolves fans. So yeah, he's always the main target, main guy for me.
One player that I almost forgot, Mario Lemina, Dan. I asked you a few weeks ago for your thoughts on him as well, and he was phenomenal against Liverpool. A lot of people's man of the match. Didn't do so well against City, but the win against West Ham a couple of weeks ago is really good as well. Be interesting to see how he gets on. Do Southampton, because Wolves do Southampton have a thing where ex-players come back to haunt you quite often, or are you quite fortunate with that?
It can vary. It doesn't necessarily happen at St Mary's, touch wood. I remember Danny Ings scoring against us at Villa Park last year, but he didn't make any of the trips to St Mary's since he was at Villa, and obviously now he's gone to West Ham. But yeah, there've been a few occasions where players have turned up and put in good performances, not necessarily scored, but had good performances. I mean, I think I did a little thing for you guys on Lemina when he signed. And I think the main thing I said was the inconsistency. I remember, God knows who, I think it's like Chris. It was the away game early in his first season at Saints, and he was sensational. He absolutely controlled the game, got man of the match. It was one of his first starts at the club. And we just thought, God, like at the time, our record signing as well. And we just got, we've got a player here. And then it was just inconsistency after inconsistency, one good game every 5, 6, maybe even 10 games. And then the season after, it was a bit difficult because, the side was struggling under Mark Hughes. He got an injury. Ralph Hasenhüttl came in. Came back from the injury. Ralph Hasenhüttl didn't really like him with attitude. So it never really worked for him at Southampton. But, I mean, from my perspective, I don't think ill of him. There were a few interesting social media posts. I think if you're of the older Southampton contingent, you probably think Mario Lamine is a bit of a knob based on some of the things that he's posted, things like little compilations and just stuff like that. I remember him posting a compilation.
Was it in like 1.5 speed as well?
Yeah, I think I think he posted the compilation when he'd been sent to train on his own to force a move away or something like that. Which was amusing, but personally, I don't think he'll love him. I'll be interested to see if he gets any boos or anything.
Yeah, or the reception.
And then, but yeah, he was a weird player for us.
Yeah, like I said, he started off well, so I'm really interested. He had a little knock against Liverpool, so it'll be interesting to see if he plays. But Dan, to finish off, score prediction off you, please.
Yeah, I am not confident for this game. I mean, regardless of all the stuff that's happened with Nathan Jones, we've only won once at home in the Premier League this season. I can't see anything but Wolves win. I'll be honest with you. Maybe a draw, but it's one of those where this squad, even under Ralph, even under Mark Hughes, for whatever reason, this club is cursed when it comes to the players and their mentality. So fragile when they go 1 goal down, and I do see that happening. I do see Wolves scoring that first goal. So, to everyone's delight, listening and watching, I'm going to go 2-0 Wolves.
Well, obviously the reverse fixture as well. I think that was Bruno Lage's only win before he lost his job as manager as well. Our only other win before Lopetegui, I think, was Steve Davis, who beat Forest. But yeah, mate, it's going to be a close game. Interesting. Looking forward to going to St Mary's. Before we finish off, do let the listeners know your channel and what you're up to on there, Dan.
Yeah, so you can catch us over on the Saints View, literally at the Saints View on social media as well. You can follow me at Dan Hargrave or Dan J Hargraves on Twitter if you want as well. Everything kind of when it comes to discussion regarding Southampton over on there.
Yeah, perfect, Dan. And thank you very much for jumping on Talking Wolves, mate. And apart from Saturday, all the best for the rest of the season.
Yeah, nice one, mate.
Cheers, buddy. So big thanks once again to Dan. I'll make sure I leave a link to him and his YouTube channel in the description down below. And there we go, guys. Looking forward to it. I'm going to go with a 2-0 Wolves win. Do let me know your thoughts and predictions. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I'll catch you all very, very soon.